All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday, June 27th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and this is All In Horns. In today's episode, we're going to be going over the top 5 players that we wish we would have had play under Steve Sarkisian. And so these are going to be basically offensive skill guys. It could be a quarterback, but probably no linemen. We're not going to even go into defense because obviously Sark's the offensive brainchild. And so we're basically going to just go down the list. We'll go one by one. We'll start at number 5. We'll work our way up to our number 1s, and we'll give our reasonings why. We'll go ahead and preface this by Jake kind of went more so on like they were already really good players. I just wanted to see how good they could have possibly been if they were under Sark, just to kind of see it. Mine more so guys that maybe were forgotten about or had a lot of potential or maybe didn't have the team success we would have liked to see. But I would have really liked to see that guy under a Steve Sarkisian just to see what the max, if they weren't coached under Charlie Strong or Tom Herman, what they could have done. Now, some of them are like Mac Brown guys and stuff. A lot of them are Mac Brown guys. And so anyway, we'll get into it and we'll talk about it. What's up?
Oh, I was just going to say that also, some of the names on my list, obvious Texas studs, but these are guys who, like, I put them on here. It's like, I think they would have won a Heisman at Texas.
Sure. Yeah.
If they were under Sarkisian versus just being, maybe an All-American type player at best. I think one of them may or may not have won a Heisman. So I put that one just for the fun of it for me. But some of these guys on the list is like, these guys would have ended up being like in a different level of the record books than they even are now.
Yeah, no. And I agree. Whenever I saw your list, I was like, you know what? I would have loved to see each and every single one of those guys play under Steve Sarkisian, just because
I feel the same way about your list. We just had 2 different approaches, but I like it when it works out that way. So we're not just copying each other.
Yeah, no. And then we have more to talk about as well. All right, Jake, start with you. You're number 5 guy.
Roy Williams, wide receiver, an easy one. I mean, in Sarkisian, probably the best receiver to ever play at Texas as far as skill, talent.
He was my favorite wide receiver for such a long time. And I remember when the Dallas Cowboys traded for him out of Detroit.
Unfortunately, right at the tail end of his career.
I don't know if I ever was like happier as a sports fan than when the Dallas Cowboys traded for Roy Williams, because he was always my number 1 like favorite wide receiver, just because he played at Texas. He was so just a freak of nature. I thought he was like a Randy Moss type guy. Obviously didn't do that in the NFL, but it goes down as one of the greatest college football wide receivers of all time.
He was really good in the NFL too. For quite a while at Detroit.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a big deal when Dallas traded for him. I mean, they had to trade a decent haul for him. And I just think under Sark's system, I mean, he could have been a guy that, had a Devontae Smith like season where he potentially wins, a Heisman trophy. But yeah, in the NFL, he did have it was the 2006 year where he really had a huge year where he had, a little over 1,300 yards receiving, which back then that didn't happen for receivers.
Yeah. And he was kind of one of the first guys, Jake. He kind of like introduced this big body plus speed combination that either you had a big body and you were almost like another tight end out there, or you were a small, fast guy. But you didn't really have both at the position. And Roy Williams was kind of that first freak of nature. And then you added Calvin Johnson at Detroit along with Roy Williams. And you were like, oh my God, they have the 2 biggest, fastest wide receivers in the entire NFL. I just remember that for a brief point in time. But yeah, no, I would have loved to see just the motion and how Sark would have used him and all the pre-snap, misdirections that you could do with him. Because again, people forget how this dude was blowing by. I mean, he was wide open down the field, 20 yards from the nearest defender. He was blowing by guys. So like he had speed along with his size. I would have loved just to see the creativity that Sark would have had with him.
Yeah, he would have put up unruly numbers. He would have been in a different stratosphere than he already is. Just because I think he would have been winning some bigger awards that he was close to winning, missed out on, and probably been drafted even higher than he was. Obviously, still a legend in Texas. This isn't saying, well, it would have been fun to see him utilized, but he had a great career. It's just in this modern offense, and with how Sarkisian utilizes players with that type of skill set, man, it would have been fun.
Yeah. I'm going to go with my number 5. I'm going to say Jermichael Finley, the tight end. And I just think, and you've got a tight end on your list, not the same tight end, but you do have a tight end on your list. With Jermichael Finley, for me, Jake, I think it was a lot of injuries, unfortunately. And I don't know if you're in a different offense, if that changes at all. I don't know if injury history just changes.
Strength and conditioning helps the program. I mean, really good strength and conditioning programs help all the sports science now. But if he was healthy, all these are assuming health.
Sure, yeah,
it would have been very fun. I mean, Sarkisian utilizes tight ends awesome,
and he was a rare, again, another kind of before his time athletic tight end that you just didn't see that at that day and age.
Yeah, his style of play, like you said, it regardless, it would have been under Sark or someone else. You feel like his career could have been a lot different stat wise, A, with health, but B, if he just played in the more modern offenses where tight ends aren't just viewed as you need to be able to block first and then be the safety blanket second. Yeah. Now tight ends are a downfield threat. I mean, even a Gunnar Helm, who was kind of that prototypical tight end, but then became a vertical threat. Yeah. Then you have guys like, Sanders, who he's a vertical threat first. You have guys like Pitts that are getting taken, early in the rounds of an NFL draft because of their receiving ability and not their blocking ability.
Is Jermichael Finley just skill and talent wise? He would be the best tight end that Sark has had at Texas. I would think skill talent wise.
I would say so because he was a good blocker and he was a more all around guy than Sanders. Sanders was almost a wide receiver hybrid. Yeah. Helm was more of an all around guy, but obviously Finley is just a different level of athleticism.
Yeah,
and just the way he could have been utilized under Sarkisian would have been incredible.
Yeah. All right, Jake, your next one.
I have a tight end now because you can't make this list and not have a tight end with how Sarkisian.
Sark has too much fun with tight ends.
David Thomas. And he was incredible at Texas. Again, another guy who had a great career at Texas. I'm not saying that they were underutilized or whatever. The game was different back then. But he was kind of another guy, a little bit ahead of his time. And he was one of the more productive tight ends receiving wise. And it was talked about every broadcast when he played in this current offense. He could have been a different level of just, approaching 1,000 yards, even just with how versatile he was then. I feel like under Sarkisian's offense, just a dream that Sarkisian could have been able to utilize him with motions, routes, and all the different ways that he could utilize someone like a David Thomas, another guy who I think would be the best tight end that Sark would have had to this point at Texas, without a doubt.
Yeah. I'm going to go my number 4, and he might be higher on this list by the end of it. I don't know, but Jamal Charles. I mean, you think about the skill set that Jamal Charles possessed and the speed. I think he is probably, maybe out of any player on our list, he might be the most prototypical Steve Sarkisian guy in terms of just his pure speed of what he could do on a football field. That would fit in Steve Sarkisian's system just seamlessly, just effortlessly.
Very easily could have won a Heisman with a Sarkisian and a good offensive line in front of him. And you tell me, the way I kind of picture Jamal Charles's like playing career, I think he developed into a better professional running back at the Chiefs than he was at college. Yeah. Last year in college, really his last 2 years in college, where it was like, oh, this guy he's not just the burner, come in and be your lightning to the thunder.
Yeah.
It was, he's just the guy.
He's the guy.
I mean, his obviously his pro career turned out to be incredible. But you know, he was there in 2005 and he had, 878 yards rushing, but his last year he had over 1,600 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
At 6.3 yards a clip, 18 touchdowns. And so that last year, because his second year was kind of the disappointing one, where he actually had less yardage his sophomore year than his freshman year.
He dealt with some injuries in college too, though. He was kind of banged up from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. He definitely went through some injuries, but it says he played 12 games, so he definitely probably missed one in 2006, but probably was battling through some injuries.
Yeah.
But then obviously that junior year was when he took off, and you're like, oh, this guy's probably going to be really good in the NFL. Obviously, I think he had maybe a longer career in the NFL than a lot would have guessed with his style. But he, people love him up here in Kansas City.
Yeah.
People still talk about him.
I mean, he was great in the receiving game too. That's kind of one thing that I remember of, like, he was one of the first guys out of the backfield that just would always get receptions and big plays out.
And that's where Sarkisian could have made. I mean, him and the Sarks in the Sark screen game
and RPOs just and stuff.
Yeah, horrifying for defenses to deal with.
Yeah. All right, Jake.
So my turn. Number 3. This one, I'm just picking the easy things off the tree here. Colt McCoy. Because he is kind of a great fit for Sarkisian, because Sark is really good with those great college quarterbacks. With the Mac Jones, like he brought Mac Jones to a whole nother level. Obviously, Colt McCoy hit that level on his own, and it would have been hard for his stats to have been that much better.
Yeah.
But yet I feel like he would have for sure won a Heisman under Sarkisian. And that's just that might not even all just be because, it's Sarkisian versus just like Colt McCoy. I mean, just any quarterback, from that, 10, 20 years ago, they're going to put up more now because of how the game has changed. Yeah. I think Colt McCoy would have thrived in an RPO system as well. Because that was his game, small to short to medium, to intermediate type throws. He was money, and he could hit the deep ball. Obviously arm strength limited him a little bit in the NFL, though he still had a very long, successful NFL career, just more so as a backup.
Yeah.
But
you played 10 years in the NFL. That's a successful career. I don't care how you do it.
And Colt McCoy under Sarkisian, I mean, he could have had a Mac Jones type season where he ends up winning a Heisman, winning a national title. And I think they would have had some better answers for some of the games they did lose, where the offense had some lulls in the very few games that he lost in his career that really kind of cost him to win a national title. Main thing that cost him win a national title was him getting his shoulder completely thrown out in a national championship game. But still.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think him in an RPO system would be a lot of fun. Colt McCoy, Jamal Charles, RPO with Steve Sarkisian. You can't tell me that doesn't make your blood pressure rise down south a little bit more. But my guy that I feel like he, whether it be injuries or what have you, or just the timing of when he got to Texas and kind of this downfall of where Texas was just at the very beginning stages of hitting the deepest, darkest depths of where Texas football has ever been. Jonathan Gray, huge recruit coming out of high school, had all the potential in the world. And again, just hit Texas at just the worst possible timing for a big time talented guy like Jonathan Gray to hit. And I think that type of skill set in Steve Sarkisian's system, he would have been an absolute stud. Probably goes down as one of the best college running backs of all time. I mean, he was just a really fun player whenever he was on the top of his game. And he's not on either one of our lists, so I'm going to throw an honorable mention out there already. But I think a Deontay Foreman would also would have
I
been really
almost put him on my list because he would have excelled under a Sarkisian system. I'm glad you said an honorable mention because I already have an honorable mention I want to say with my next one.
All right.
Which Jordan Shipley is who I have on here. I don't even think I need to elaborate on this.
It's Jordan Shipley. Yeah.
Imagine, I mean, just take Jordan Shipley and put him on this next year's Texas team, and I think they win the national title. Just because that's probably kind of maybe what they're meant. We don't know yet, but that guy is just going to be open every time. It doesn't have to be a deep threat necessarily, but it's just going to work that middle of the field.
You got to have an underneath guy with the deep threats. You got to have one.
Yeah, in the Sarkisian system, I feel like he would just thrive even more somehow. And you'd have your special teams as well from him.
Put a DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, and Jordan Shipley on the same field. You can do the imagination can run as wild as you want it to be, and it's still not going to be able to like actually do what they would be capable of doing under Sark's system.
Yeah. I just, when I started thinking, he was actually the first name that came to mind. It was like, Jordan Shipley.
He was the first name that came to my mind, and then I saw your list. I was like, well, I'll think of somebody else. And then I immediately thought of
I did the list first, so I got to take the easy, low-hanging fruit. Yeah. But here's a honorable mention. Since I've mentioned a bunch of obvious names, I'm going to say one that I don't think probably even came to your mind. Dejae Johnson.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
That is a Sarkisian player that was not utilized at Texas like he should have been.
He was one of the most athletic players I think I've ever seen at Texas, but just didn't know how to be used. And that's no fault to Mac Brown or anybody, but that was just didn't know how to use him.
Yeah, and he went into, I think, the Charlie Strong era because 2012 to 2015, that definitely. Okay.
I think he was in
that might have been all Mac Brown. Those years start to blur together and not in a good way.
No.
But I mean, he'd be a guy who, like, me and my dad watched the games. Every time my dad would be like, why didn't he get the ball more? Just somehow just get him the ball.
Don't you hate those guys? It's like, why don't they get the ball more? I hate saying that about a player. Why don't they get the ball more?
I mean, he could have been like a much better Keelan Robinson. I mean, because he just had a different level of speed.
That's a great comp, Jake. I think a great player comp to him is a Keelan Robinson. But I think a better version of what Keelan Robinson ever was for Texas.
In the screen game, you could have used him in the screen game, having him in motion. I would have loved to seen a player like him get utilized because he's a guy who, I mean, he had 459 yards rushing in his career at Texas. He had 873 yards receiving in his career at Texas. He did have some injuries mixed in, but those numbers multiply if he is at the University of Texas under Sarkisian.
Yeah. And we'll get into more honorable mentions here in a little bit once we're done with our list, because I'm sure there's a lot of guys' names that are just popping up in everybody's heads right now. But I'll go ahead and give you my number 2 guy, Colin Johnson. He was a player that when he was at, summer camp as a freshman, and he was this 6'6", running a 4-flat 40, getting one-handed catches on the sideline. I'm thinking, is this Texas's Calvin Johnson? Like, are we going to have like just the freakiest of freak athletes? And then obviously you got the quarterback situation. You've got the coaching of, what was Colin Johnson? Was he in, again, that era, post Colt McCoy, Mac Brown, and then going into Charlie Strong?
Was with Sam Ellinger, wasn't he? At the end,
I feel like he was with Charlie Strong and a Tom Herman. I feel like he was in that range because he was
2019 was his last year. At Texas.
He had like Lil Jordan Humphrey and Colin Johnson. That was with Sam Ellinger, I think, with Charlie Strong.
And so, yeah, Sam Ellinger, the LSU game would have been, but he got hurt that year. But in the middle of the season, against LSU, because then he didn't play again until Oklahoma.
And then it was him and Lil Jordan Humphrey were like the Twin Towers.
Yeah, because 2017 was when he really started to get utilized a little more. But I mean, he never had 1,000-yard year at Texas, despite how.
That's a shame. That's such a shame. Like, see, and that's where I came up with my list of guys that are like, they so underperformed, and I don't know if it was to any fault of their own, except that they weren't developed properly to play at the college level like they should have been. And we've even seen Colin Johnson do some stuff at the NFL level, for a little short bit of time, especially he is the preseason god. He's one of the, if there was a fantasy football league, you're taking Colin Johnson number 1 overall in fantasy football preseason, because he always gets a touchdown, whether that be for the Jacksonville Jaguars or whoever, Chicago Bears, whoever he's playing for. So Colin Johnson he's probably my biggest what if. And you add a what if along with adding him to Steve Sarkisian's offense, I think he would have been a phenomenal player.
Yeah, kind of like a God, the name's escaping me, and it shouldn't be. Georgia wide receiver who transferred in.
Oh, not A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell.
Okay.
A.D. Mitchell, a little bit more athletic, a little bit quicker, but as far as that wingspan, that being able to grab the ball, a little bit more possession than him. But I think his routes and how he was utilized could have been similar to an Adonai Mitchell.
And I think, Jake, speaking of his routes, because I think that's kind of what maybe was a little bit of his downfall. Do you not think that Steve Sarkisian would have developed him to be a much better route runner at his time at Texas?
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast just complaining about development until Sarkisian came in. And I think a lot of fans seem to forget how bad development was back then. But yeah, when I saw Colin Johnson, I thought about putting Colin Johnson on this. I just went these guys were so good. Imagine them on this next year's Longhorn team list.
A lot of fun. Would have been a lot of fun.
Which is my number 1 pick, which is just the lowest of low hanging fruit. That's why it's number 1. Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
He won a Heisman. He would have won a Heisman under Sarkisian as well. His numbers would have been absurd. Yeah. Just like his numbers already were absurd, but you just in a Sarkisian system, it's just like imagining all the games just being put away by halftime because the offense doesn't get stopped in the red zone because you have Ricky Williams and it doesn't matter. We got to see a little bit of it with Bijan, but I almost put Bijan on the list and just said, man, I wish we could have seen him
more
with the teams that had much better offensive lines and were really, really good. The teams that if they had Bijan last year, they win the national championship.
I was just about to say, put Bijan on last year's team. Where does Texas go?
Yeah, they probably win the national championship. I think that's enough to put them over Ohio State because the red zone issues are what sunk them against Ohio State. Bijan fixes a lot of red zone issues. He did. I think their best red zone season has probably been that 8-5 year because when they got to the red zone, they scored because of the running backs, and they haven't been able to find a guy equal to Bijan since, despite still having really good running backs. But Bijan was more of a generational type talent.
Yeah, you took Jordan Shipley as your as one of your guys. I'm going to put Jackson Shipley on this list, and
one of the biggest what ifs in Texas history.
A huge what if. Didn't have a quarterback to throw it to him. Bad offenses, bad offensive line play, just bad. It was at the very tail end of Mac Brown and going into Charlie Strong. There was just it was a very bad time to play for Texas. And Jackson Shipley, I thought, was one of the most consistent players that were on any of those teams. Was one of my favorite players. Jordan Shipley obviously has the accolades, but man, a big what if with Jackson Shipley. And I would have loved to see him on this year's team with Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning. I'd love to see what he'd been able to do.
Depressing looking at his yardage by the years. His first year, 2011, 607 yards receiving, really good for a freshman. 2012, 737. Okay, got a little bit better. Last 2 years, 589 and 577, playing just as many games. Just a drop off in 2013 and 14, and that had nothing to do with Jackson Shipley being the issue.
No, it didn't.
He has some 1,000 yards receiving years with Sarkisian for sure.
Probably a couple of them, to be honest with you. Yeah, no, he was. Again, my list was more based on guys that never lived up to what they should have lived up to, and it was no fault of their own. It was, a lot of it was coaching and player development issues. And and Jake, you had a really fun list in terms of all-time great Longhorns, making them even greater in Steve Sarkisian's offense. Jake, there was a player that I wanted to throw in there, and I even looked him up just to make sure that I had the right guy. John Burt with Case McCoy.
That's a good one.
There was a name that popped up to me, and I was like, man, John Burt would have been a really fun player to see play for Steve Sarkisian.
Here's one. If Jackson Shipley's not the biggest what if in our lifetime, this is David Ash.
I had him on my list. I thought about it, but then I said, well, does he just get injured anyway? Like, does he take a hit to the head and just
when you do this list, you have, but the fact his injuries were runs and things, like, you feel like maybe, but when you do this list, you got to do it from they're not getting injured standpoint. That's the tough thing with that. But also, if Ash was healthy, it's not like Texas was going to win a national championship with the coaching that was there with him there. It's more of he probably would have extended coaches' careers, which is probably a worse scenario. But David Ash under Sarkisian, if he could stay healthy,
he might have been
a fun one.
He may have been the biggest what if, Jake,
because Texas couldn't find a quarterback for so long. Again, I think they could have probably had Vince Young with some of those coaches and not have done much. But David Ash, I think a lot of Longhorn fans always will bring him up as like a man. Wish he could have stayed healthy, but also wish he could have had a good offensive system and really good coaching. And better strength and conditioning. That was always those Texas teams. A lot of them are what I've seen go injury. Well, those Texas teams always had a ton of injuries. And it does feel like strength and conditioning, sports science, how good you keep up with all that stuff. It doesn't determine. I mean, if a guy's ACL tears, it happened. I mean, CJ Baxter, Christian Clark. If that type of stuff's going to happen regardless.
I mean, look at Quinn Ewers over the last couple of years. He's been
Quinn Ewers. Texas hasn't had a QB stay healthy the full season with Sarkisian there. So injuries happen, but as a whole, injuries have happened less under this regime than some of those previous ones. Yeah.
No, notable names that we did not mention or not have on honorable mention is a Vince Young. I think Vince Young was perfect for Mac Brown. We didn't mention Sam Ehlinger either. I don't think Steve Sarkisian. Those aren't Sark type guys.
Yeah, I thought about both of them. I was like, no, it's not Sarkisian. That's not his system. And
I do think both would obviously be successful under Sarkisian. Don't get me wrong.
Sarkisian would adapt to them, but would they have been the guys that Sarkisian went after?
Vince Young, yes.
Well, Vince Young, yes, he was the number one. But Sam Ehlinger, he might not get recruited by Texas. Maybe not. with Sarkisian there, just because he, maybe he could, because he wasn't a bad passer by any means.
And the RPO system he would have done really well. And
I do think Ehlinger would have done well.
Tom Herman just abused Sam Ehlinger physically, mentally. I thought that was the most abusive job that you could have ever done to a quarterback, and just never developed him and just ran him 30 times to rely on offense. It was just awful coaching. And I don't think Sarkisian would have ever put him through that.
Yeah. Sam Ehlinger, his passing stats definitely get a lot better under Steve Sarkisian, because there would have been actual development. There would have been actual hey, maybe don't just ram your head first into the defense every single possession. In the first quarter against West Virginia, why are you doing this? And I mean, that some of that is what made us love Ehlinger so much, but his heart would have showed up no matter what. And Tom Herman had a tendency to just try to injure players. It felt like
I don't like talking about Tom Herman era, because I start getting on a rant and my blood starts
at least Charlie Strong, you'd be like, well, he's a pretty good guy. While he was at Texas, he came off as a good guy. He's a really bad football coach.
He's a nice dude,
but he seemed like a nice dude. Tom Herman was a douchebag. There's nothing good about that other than, hey, at least they made bowl games and he won bowl games.
Yeah, it was the worst.
And your team takes it takes from what your coach does.
Yep.
And I mean, even though Texas had to, but Tom Herman was just a douche, and he had
He's
piss
the worst.
charts, and just a certified weirdo.
Yeah. But anyway, this was a really fun episode. I think we could go down a very deep rabbit hole of other potential players that we would have loved to see Steve Sarkisian. This is a great episode for you guys to chime in as well, listening to this video. In the comment section, please add your list of guys. I know there's probably some 80s and older guys that
there's got to be some old heads that are going to have some names in there.
There's got to be some old heads that have some names in there for us, and please throw them our way. We're not going to be. You don't need to call us out on it. We just weren't alive when that happened, and we just probably miscalculated some of the
Earl Campbell's an obvious one.
Sure.
I mean, there's obvious ones out there, but maybe some names that you wouldn't think of. There's definitely got to be some out there.
There's got to be some out there,
especially receivers and stuff, where in the modern day offense they would have excelled. There's got to be a bunch.
They just have a certain skill set where you're like, that would actually translate really well to today's game. That they just weren't utilized back then. They were ahead of their time. But all right, well, Jake, that was a fun episode. A lot of fun doing that one with you. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this show up again. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We're here for you every single day of the summer, 5 days a week, and we will be here giving you Longhorn content until we get to the big season, a football season, and the content will only continue, get bigger and better as we get closer to football season. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.